I think I, like a lot of other people, have stopped listening to much of what the president says. You have to look at what he does and forget about whatever he's saying. And unfortunately, in this sense, there is no evidence whatsoever that I can find from anybody who is in a position to know that there are any discussions going on between us and the Iranians. None. So my assumption is nothing's changed. The military buildup continues, and as I understand it, there is a buildup. Additional assets are being brought into the theater. So my assumption is at some point he's going to pull the trigger.
And what do you think, even before we get into what some others are saying here, what happens if he pulls that trigger? I mean, is that going to budge the Iranians loose? Is that going to diminish their missile capacity so that they can't hang on to the Strait of Hormuz? What is that going to do?
Well, I wouldn't expect a great deal to change. You've got to look at this thing from different angles. From the Iranian standpoint, they've captured the strategic high ground. They hold the initiative. We're now in the position of trying to regain it. How do we regain it? The only way to regain it is to attack Iran. How do you attack Iran? Are we going to do something new and different from what we've done in the past? I think that's pretty tough. So what are you going to do? I think you're going to do what you've done before with greater force and greater intensity if you can do it. This is kind of a return to what we call the gambler's fallacy, Dan. Somebody like Trump is a gambler, and he says, I always win. I'm a lucky guy. I always win. I know one more throw and I can win. And I think that's on his mind. Now that he's going to roll the dice again on the assumption that this time, with every B-52, every B-1, every B-2, every aircraft that currently is flyable, with every bomb and munition that we can scrape together that still is precise in some way, all of that will be hurled at Iran. And this time, quote unquote, it's going to work. Now, the other thing that we can't lose sight of is that the people that put him into office are the ones that have been pushing this war. And they want this war to go on. The job now is to utterly destroy Iran. If you can't change the government, if you can't push the population into revolt, and all of that is nonsense, it was never going to happen, then what do? Well, you destroy Iran. And that's where we are.
Well, at least that's where we want to be. We'll find out where we are. Interesting. Well, still, President Trump is still talking like, this attacks or these threat of attacks is going to bring Iran back to the table. And let's look at that. As far as what is your understanding, if there is, if you can divine one, as to what kind of a deal President Trump's even talking about now, because we had a deal. He signed a deal just in June 17th, so less than 2 months ago. That fell apart right away. So what is your understanding of even what kind of deal he's trying to get now?
That's a good question. I don't really know. Remember that it's all about appearing to have won. But even that is not enough, because he's got to go back hat in hand to his bosses, Netanyahu, the Zionist billionaires. And he's got to say, okay, this is what I think I can get. Will this be enough? And I don't think very much is going to be enough for them, short of the total destruction of Iran. Remember, this is a war from the very beginning, not about something important to us. We've been down this road so many times, Dan, listened to so many people talk about Iran, listen to all the claims that Iran is evil incarnate and bent on the destruction of everyone, everywhere, all the time. It's all nonsense. It's just not true. We know that. So this is a war for Jewish supremacy in the Middle East and in the region. And it's tied in strange ways back to New York City and the international finance community. And quite frankly, can no longer be viewed separately from Ukraine, because the same people pushing the war against Iran in the Middle East are also pushing war against Russia in Ukraine. So that you've got a larger enchilada, if you will, than you started with. So you can't expect some sort of flimsy piece of paper that grants Iran control of the Strait of Hormuz or any significant sovereignty issues, or doesn't eliminate the nuclear capability. Anything that falls short of those things, Dan, is simply not going to be accepted.
But towards what end? I mean, just forget about morality, take that in, or even logic, and take that out the window. But there has to be some kind of mentality behind this idea that, especially those who appear to actually want to merge the two together and to go down a path that any neophyte can see, that the Iran war is not militarily winnable, and yet they are pushing for exactly that. And if they know rationally that they're not going to get a military victory, then what is the advantage to the people pushing this to try anyway?
Well, the government that we're backing in all of this is Israel. What do Ben-Gvir and Smotrich have to say? What are they talking about? They're talking about the systematic removal of the Palestinian population from both the West Bank and Gaza. They would prefer to push them out. If they won't be pushed out, they'll kill them. They've gone into Lebanon with the same basic goal in mind, up to the Litani River at least. And for the moment, that seems to be on hold, but there's nothing settled. So I think the answer is, as you point out, is certainly not rational. And I think Donald Trump is on that train. He's sitting in the locomotive. He may not be actively pulling all the levers or choosing the tracks, but he's on for the ride. And it's do or die in his mind. I think it's do or die in the minds of the Israelis and their backers here in the United States. And anybody who disagrees, of course, is an anti-Semite, a Jew hater, or some other nonsense. But I think it's wearing thin. You know, we had this Grinkevich, the Army general. I don't know if he's an Army general, Air Force general, who is over in NATO, and he said he's got to make a choice between defending Israel and defending the United States if he doesn't get another destroyer. It sounds a bit over the top, but I think he was trying to make a point on a larger scale. I'm surprised he's still on the job. I think that's where we are. So if you're looking for a rational explanation, you're not going to find it. There's nothing rational anymore. You probably should go into public records and pull up all of his investments, his interests, his income, and so forth, and you'll discover that he's part of the same community that Larry Kudlow lives in New York City. That community is committed to everything that Jack Keane and Larry Kudlow explained. That particular community right now controls the White House and the Hill. So he's really preaching to the choir. Now, to the rest of us in the United States that are not part of that community, we find this irrational and self-defeating. But I think in his view, there's nothing to be gained by becoming rational at this point. Look at the performance of the big five industries in the defense sector. Look where they were in 2022 and where they are today. You're talking about jumps from $22 a share up to $70 a share and higher. My point is that a lot of money is being made by a lot of people, not just in the circle of the White House. We all know how that's been going. We've watched them short oil, and we watched Trump sort of create a culture of manipulation that allows people to profit from these crises and wars. This is all part of it. So there's no incentive for him to take the position that you and I do. You and I aren't profiting from these things, but they are. And I think that's the simple explanation. Now, Larry Kudlow, of course, is a little different because he's emotionally committed. This is more important to him than anything else. And he's going to sign on for anything that promises the total annihilation of Iran. And literally, that's what these people are talking about. My point is that's not going to happen. It can't be achieved. But that's what they're pushing Donald Trump to do.
You know, it's funny. If Jack Keane is outright saying there, I don't want any deal, let's just require forced surrender. There are others that seem to be a little bit more pragmatic, but maybe a little bit more immoral and unethical as well. Here is Jim Hansen. It's also on Fox News, and he's going to be saying, okay, this is out loud, by the way. Look, let's just tell Iran whatever they want to hear to get us to the midterms, and then we'll bring the hammer down.
President Trump does not want to go into the midterms with chaos in the Middle East, no oil flowing, the markets in response to that. He needs to have Republicans retain control of Congress so that he has freedom of maneuver after the midterms. But that doesn't mean he's going to give them what they want. He can keep them at bay with military force if he needs to, if they're not willing to make a deal. Between now and the midterms, he'll mitigate what damage they can cause to oil prices and our economy, and he'll hope that they will sign some sort of a short-term deal. After the midterms, I wouldn't want to be them.
So, I mean, he is literally saying, look, I know we've lied to them in the past and pretended in negotiations. Let's do it again and then just get to the midterms. And then with no more constraints, then we'll come in with the heavy weapons. How is that going to be received in Iran?
Well, I don't know Hansen, what his background is and what leads him to these conclusions, but there's something we ought to agree on right now, right up front. If Donald Trump ended this war unilaterally on his own and said, this is it, I've gone as far as I can go, it's in the interest of the global economy as well as our own for this war to end, so I'm going to disengage our forces from this war, and began a slow, deliberate, and methodical withdrawal, he would be cheered from coast to coast, from the Atlantic to the Pacific. The overwhelming majority of the American electorate wants nothing to do with this war. They don't care about it. They don't want it. They don't care about it. So there's no loss for Donald Trump in that sense politically. So he's dead wrong. In fact, if he ended this flat out, as we just discussed, and got out, I think we'd probably see a different outcome in the midterms. It certainly would be better than it will be at this point. But he doesn't seem to understand that. And that's understandable because he's probably part of that bubble that we were talking about earlier. And you have this minority that has enormous financial power that is in control. They want this war of annihilation waged against Iran. End of discussion, full stop. They're driving it. And Trump owes them enormous gratitude for his position in the White House and his position in politics. And I still think to some extent he must be under some form of duress.
It's interesting that what you say there is maybe more true than some even realize. This past weekend, I was at an event where pollster Rich Barris was speaking, and he and I had a sidebar conversation, and he expressed some of his real frustration because he had recently went to the White House and told President Trump exactly what you just said, that the numbers support what you said profoundly. He said, especially among his base, there is overwhelming support for just ending this war right now and moving on. And they don't care about any of those things. I mean, literally every word you just said was validated by the data and the numbers. And this is a guy that President Trump respects because he's the one that got 2016 right when nearly all the other pollsters got it wrong. And it's puzzling him and it's puzzling me why he's not making these decisions that are political winners for him, especially heading into the midterms, which makes me worried what you just said there, that maybe he's under duress for some other reason, which I can't divine.
Well, remember Tucker Carlson back in 2023 brought me on his show up at his residence up there in New England. And the first question out of his mouth was, do you think we're on the road to war with Iran? And I unhesitatingly said yes. Now, he subsequently went to the White House a couple of years later, met with President Trump, and then he reported after he'd met with him that Donald Trump fully understood the pitfalls. In other words, the problems with a war against Iran. He understood the risks. He understood the implications, even the ramifications strategically for us. And he left the Oval Office satisfied that the president understood what he was getting into, and he concluded the president would not get into it as a result. Well, he was wrong. And the president knew then and understands now, and he's done it anyway. So I think we have to, it's wrong. People say, well, this man can't be this stupid. He is not a stupid man. Emotionally unbalanced, there are a lot of problems there, but this is not somebody who's stupid. He may not be well read or well versed in the world that we live in overseas beyond our borders. But this man is not stupid. He understands what he started, and he understands what he's doing. So when you look at this and you say, well, then what is going on? You have to reach two conclusions, and I gave you the first one. The first one is, well, I started this. It's the gambler's fallacy. I've got to finish it. one more throw of the dice and I'll win. That's one part. Secondly, people have got something on him, something that is so powerful. He cannot possibly deviate from the path that he's on.
And I guess only time is going to tell us which one of those is. I wonder, because you've got some direct experience with President Trump and rationally coming to a decision and then having somebody change his mind later in 2021, when you were the special advisor to the Secretary of Defense, you came up with what I consider to be a brilliant plan to have gotten all of our troops out of Afghanistan in order in a coordinated manner before the end of his term when he left. And you even went so far as to actually get him to sign an execution order, which was subsequently sabotaged by the Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff and the acting Secretary of Defense afterwards. What did you see in his, because you mentioned that you don't think he's a stupid man, because you walked him through, as I understand, all of the benefits and the cost to potentially doing this. He came to the right conclusion, but then got talked out of it.
Well, I didn't walk him through the details, but he understood that it could be done. He understood, I think, that the winter was the ideal time. You've been in Afghanistan and you know the fighting season over there. The winter was a good time to pull out. But he was talked out of it. He was talked out of it by people in his own administration. That included the Secretary of Defense at the time. It also included Kash Patel, who went over with Mr. Miller, the Secretary of Defense. And they joined hands with Mitch McConnell and several other people from the Hill. And they all said, oh, you can't do this. We've already made commitments. We've talked to allies. We've this and that and everything else. And then he backed down and he said, well, what can I do? If I can't get everybody out, then what can I do? It's the old half pregnancy thing. And that's a political problem. No politician wants to bring the child to full term and then be responsible for it. So he backed down. And I think it was unfortunate. And the result is that what we saw under Biden was terrible. And it could have been avoided. But he backed down. And this is one of the reasons that people accuse him of backing out on a number of different things. But this time around, I don't see any evidence for that. Maybe I'm wrong, but I just haven't seen it.
Yeah, well, keep hoping so. But back to this gambler's fallacy here, trying to roll the dice and get something to happen. We just showed, Hansen and Jack Keane and several others. They don't even want a deal. Well, it turns out there actually is some negotiations going on. It just doesn't include the United States. Here is the deputy Iranian foreign minister talking about the negotiations that are nearing a finalization between them and Oman, with an important caveat.
Significant progress has been made in the talks with Oman, and these advancements are on the verge of being finalized. We were not and are not actually looking to implement Clause 5 of the Memorandum of Understanding right now, because the United States has set aside all its obligations, and we, too, have set aside our obligation regarding the Strait of Hormuz. What we are doing with Oman is a natural path, regardless of whether a Memorandum of Understanding existed or not. I stated that if we want normal conditions to be established in the Strait of Hormuz, it must be through the path of understanding between Iran and Oman, not through the path of imposition and influence.
So the Iranians looked like they've said, you know what, I'm just leaving the U.S. behind. We're going to work on our own deal that's going on here. And then whereas President Trump is issuing these warnings he did in that first one, Iran is also issuing its own warnings by saying that they warned the Gulf states that any new U.S. strikes on Iran would trigger retaliatory attacks on their oil, power, water, and transportation networks. Reuters reports that Tehran delivered the message through senior diplomatic contacts with Saudi Arabia, Qatar, Turkey, and Pakistan, urging regional partners to pressure Trump to abandon military action and return to negotiations. And from what we've been able to understand, that's why the last round didn't happen that previous weekend, because Saudi Arabia was the leading voice to say, don't do this because we're going to get hit and there's nothing you can do to stop it. How do you see this dynamic? And what if the whole region comes to some kind of accommodation without us even being involved?
Well, remember what President Trump said when he signed the MOU in Paris at Versailles. He said, I don't want to be Herbert Hoover, and I'm not going to be responsible for a global depression that results. So this is a man who understands the consequences. And what you just showed in that well, I don't know if it was a memorandum or it's just a tweet. What you showed states very clearly what the Iranians have said from the beginning. If you destroy our oil infrastructure, you destroy our power, water, and transportation networks, we will utterly obliterate everything on the other side of the Gulf. In other words, on the western side of the Persian Gulf. Now, I'm one of these people that is unconvinced that any of the little statelets that are on the western side of the Gulf are going to survive this. I don't think people in the United States realize how fragile those states are, how little they can mobilize in terms of military power to defend themselves. Saudi Arabia is viewed like the UAE is very duplicitous, as playing all sides to the middle. And so the Iranians, their attitude is these people have screwed us, taken advantage of us, hurt us, harmed us, cooperated with our enemies, the Israelis and others, on a routine basis. So we have no compunction or hesitation whatsoever about destroying them. I think President Trump realizes that, and I'm sure that he is being reluctant to take action. However, Israelis don't care, and their agents in Washington don't care. They could care less. As far as they're concerned, everybody in the region can die if it's going to promote their dominance, their control of the region. I mean, frankly, that's it. All you have to do is listen to the Israeli leadership. They make that abundantly clear. So I think we're back to where we started. President Trump, if he pushes, let's put it this way, there are three doors. Door number one is reopen the war with everything you've got. Door number two is do nothing. And door number three is do a little and then try to negotiate. Well, you've already tried door number one. You're going to go back to door number one? Well, maybe so. Door number two, do nothing. That's not up for consideration. He can't sustain himself politically. Money that is vital to his survival in the White House to deliver the Congress is at risk. Remember the hundreds of millions of dollars that are being assembled in various funds to destroy people like Thomas Massie, or for that matter, Marjorie Taylor Greene, or anyone who opposes this war with Iran. Those funds can be applied to destroy Donald Trump. And Donald Trump knows that. Right now, those funds are being committed to his support and defense. Those funds are vital to his survival because they can prevent any impeachment. So doing nothing is a non-starter. What about door number three? Well, we know that President Netanyahu was furious at President Trump's decision to postpone the attack. And lots of people are saying, well, he's reconsidering. But we also know there are problems with the munitions, and we are waiting for resupply, and we're bringing more aircraft into the theater. So there are other things going on here as well. So my point is, when you look at the three doors, you could try door three again, but that hasn't been very fruitful. So you're really being pushed back to door number one, which is all-out war.